Hi and welcome back to Chess TV. We're finally back from our winter break and we hope you've had a great start to the new year, but it's only going to get better from here on. In this week's episode, we've prepared a brand new opening score with Amelia and Alfred, who will pick up where we left off in the Nimza Indian defense. Then it's time for a tricky chess puzzle, followed by the Nordic Museum Part 4. But first, the Trade-Wise Gibraltar Chess Congress is kicking off this week on January the 23rd, and we'll get into see quite the starting field. The most interesting part is probably that we'll get to see the entire women's elite play in the mixed group of the event. All eyes will be on the reigning women world champion 17-year-old Hu Yifan coming to Gibraltar for the first time. Indian sensation Humpy Conero will be keen to score well. If things go her way, she could take home the special £5,000 Commonwealth prize. Anna Mushchuk from Slovakia has been in brilliant form lately and looks like a good bet for a high placing. Visit GibraltarChessCongress.com to keep up with the event. The 44th annual Liberty Bell Open took place over the Martin Luther King weekend from January the 13th to the 16th at the Sheraton City Center Hotel in Philadelphia. The event had 9 sections with over 500 participants. FIDE Master Victor Chen had a spectacular tournament, defeating 5 masters including top-seeded international master Leonid Gertov and drawing with the number 2 seed Jacek Norovich in round 6. Turning in a powerful 2,678 tournament performance rating and winning the first place too. Congratulations! We'd also like to give a bit of a shout out to the Hip Hop Chess Federation, an organization based in the US that devotes itself to show teens that you can achieve anything with a good life strategy, hard work, and dedication. The aim is to bring kids up straight into the classrooms by teaching a combination of chess and martial arts with the support of some hip-hop legends. On February the 11th, the organization is celebrating their 5-year anniversary. We'd like to congratulate the founder of the Hip Hop Chess Federation, Mr. Adisa Banjoko, and wish him and the entire organization good luck. And if you want to know more about upcoming events or the organization in general, visit hiphopchessfederation.com. Before we get into the Nimza Indian defense with Amelia and Alfred, here's Albert. His topic in this episode are actually the ideas of a man who inspired the rapper Tupac to, a millennium later, use his name as his pseudonym.
Chess has often been likened to war. It is easy to draw parallels between a chess player and the general who commands his forces. But can the complexity of chess really be boiled down to a battlefield? Is the object of the game just to win territory and fight to preserve it? Or is it maybe also about managing the territory that you already possess? Being able to rule, to implement your will, make it the reasoning one on the board. I believe, as Machiavelli wrote in the 16th century, that for the ruler it is of greater importance to know how to rule his people than to conquer countries. And that's what chess can teach those who are open to the idea. The game is not about knocking down your opponent's pieces as quickly as possible. It's about taking advantage of your people's resources in such a way as to acquire a strong position and constantly improve it to cement your power over the playing field. On that basis, I think we chess players can learn a lot from Machiavelli's theories, and at the same time, the game of chess can be seen as a complement for those who want to learn how to manage power. For what is really power if not the ability to rule over other people's destinies? And how is that different from a chess player who is thinking, worrying, and determining the actions and futures of his men on the chessboard? I was thinking that over the next few weeks, I'd talk a bit about Machiavelli and his theories from a chess player's perspective. So we'll be back with the first chapter in the next week's episode. But now it's time for Amelia and Alfred in the opening school.
The winter break is finally over and it's time for a new episode of the opening school.
We'll continue from where we last put off and analyze the Nimzo-Indian defense.
The Nimzo-Indian is achieved after d4, knight to f6, c4, e6, knight to c3, and bishop to b4, and it's a very common defense used by black. We have previously seen what happens after the more common continuations such as e3 and queen to c2 among others.
So today we'll take a look at the somewhat less popular bishop to g5. With this last move, black pinned the white knight on c3, taking over the control over the e4 square. White can of course not be any worse and pins the black knight on f6 in turn, leaving the battle over the e4 square yet to be decided.
One of the advantages with this move is that it greatly limits black possibilities. In fact, c5 is the only acceptable line to follow, but it doesn't have to be played right away. In fact, black should begin with playing h6, pushing the white bishop back to h4 and forcing it to release the control over the c3 to h6 diagonal, cutting it off from the queen side.
Black shouldn't be afraid of a capture on f6, and for that matter, white shouldn't take on f6 to begin with. This since it would only lead to a position where the black queen would be positioned in a very good square to attack the center from, especially since black is about to play c5. After white's bishop to h4, black plays c5. White, not wanting to gain the upper hand in the fight for control in the center, advances with the d-pawn. Black can now choose between playing an aggressive or positional line, depending on which move black chooses. b5, bishop takes on c3 check, or d6.
b5 is obviously the aggressive line. Black attacks the foundation of the white center, the c4 pawn, but sacrifices a pawn in the process. To capture on b5 right away isn't white's best option. This since black can win the d5 pawn after playing g5. This should be followed by bishop to g3 and knight takes on d5.
Instead of this, white will reach a better position after first exchanging pawns on e6 and then capturing on b5. White is an entire pawn up, but for this, black has a pawn majority in the center and many open files which can be used in an offensive manner. This is a rather dangerous position, and both sides have to have good calculating skills as well as a feeling for dynamics in order to get the most out of this line.
Next option is to exchange on c3 directly, giving white double pawns on the c file. This is one of the positional lines, and after d6, e3 and e5, the games aim for the same pawn structure as in the Hübner variation.
The last choice is to play d6 directly. This is also a positional line, and it merges with the line which follows after bishop takes on c3 check, after e3, and an exchange on c3 and e5.
Neither white nor black have any immediately weaknesses, and there really are no tactical problems to worry about in difference to what we saw after b5. The game will be quite restricted and mainly concentrated on the king side. If you decide to play bishop to g5 as white, you have to be comfortable with playing both tactical and positional play, since it's really up to black to decide which line to pick. But the greatest advantage is that the limitation that sets on black, and even though there is much theory to learn in this line too, it's not that much compared to the other variations that we have come across so far in the Nimzo-Indian. With that, we will end this week's episode of the Opening School, and we'll of course be back again next week, so see you then. After a long break from these chess puzzles, it's finally time again to challenge ourselves with that tough puzzle. It's always nice to have some rest from everything, but to be honest, nothing beats the feeling to accomplish something, reach a goal, or simply winning in chess. So this week's puzzle is admittedly only checkmate in 2 moves, but do not underestimate the puzzle for that. It is white that wins, it is a checkmate in 2 moves, and you have 1 minute, so good luck now. Black has 3 more pawns, but the position tells us that Black's future is quite so hopeless. Black is threatening the white queen, but it is white's move now, so the threat is not worth that much at all. It is clear that white has a good attack here, which definitely can lead to something if we only can find the right moves, of course. The rook on d8 tempts us to look for some type of cover check with the knight if we only could remove the bishop on f8. And that is just that kind of maneuver we must find in this position. We can see that the knight can check the king if it stood on f6. The queen is however standing there now, but if we with the queen move also could remove the bishop from the 8th rank, we would get exactly what we want here. We can at once disregard the move queen to h8 check. A queen sacrifice really have to have a thought behind it, and this move just don't have it. The king would then only capture it, and then it is useless to try to jump with the knight to f6. Here we also see our next problem we have, namely that if the knight would go to f6 in this position, the rook would only capture it. This simply means that our knight move must occupy black elsewhere, which is why the knight move must be performed with a double check. Therefore, we play queen to g7 check. This is a sacrifice, but it's brilliant. The king is unable to capture the queen thanks to the knight, which only leaves the bishop to come to black's rescue. We have now got rid of the bishop from the 8th rank, which means that we can play knight to f6 with a double check. The rook check prevents both the bishop and the rook from capturing the knight, and the knight check prevents the bishop from blocking on f8. And what about the king? Well, he can't go anywhere at all, which means that we've managed to checkmate him in 2 moves. So there you go. Checkmates in 2 moves are great warm-ups for new chess seasons, and this chess season has already started. I think you all managed to find the checkmate, and if you didn't, I think you already know what I will say here next, which is to continue practicing and never to give up.
Förra veckan så började vi titta på objekt i samlingarna på Nordiska museet och vi hittade en hel del med schackanknytning. Så vi ska gräva vidare idag, så låt oss gå in igen och se om vi kan fortsätta våra efterforskningar på schacksamlingens område här. Ja, då har vi tagit oss tillbaka kan vi säga till 1700-talet igen. Och vi har 2 fina spel framför oss. Och vi kan börja med det här spelet utfört med tre pjäser och helt utfört i 3. Vad kan ni mera säga om det här och dess historia?
Det är en gåva från löjtnant Arthur Bäckström som var väldigt intresserad av kulturhistoria och som hade gården Julita i Sörmland som han senare donerade till museet. Och han har fått det här som en gåva från general Levrén som var född i slutet av 1700-talet.
Ja, och stilen påminner mycket om andra 1700-tals pjäser och spel, så att vi kan väl med ganska stor säkerhet säga att det i alla fall är ett 1700-tals arbete då förmodligen. Det är ett fint spel i sig, och sen kommer vi till det som vi har lite grann till vänster här, där pjäserna är fantastiskt fint utsirade. Och ja, vad kan vi säga om det här?
Vi vet att det skänktes till Nordiska museet redan 1879 när det fortfarande hette Skandinaviska etnografiska samlingen och låg vid Drottninggatan. Och man ordnade basarer och sådär, och på så sätt Arthur Hazelius som grundade Nordiska museet var ju väldigt skicklig på att tigga. Så han lyckades få in föremål från hela Sverige genom donationer, och han var även bra på att samla in pengar. Och senare kunde man ju bygga Nordiska museet på Djurgården, den stora byggnaden.
Ja, och vi kan se de här pjäserna, och de är fantastiskt fint snidade, och vi tror att de då är 1700-talsarbeten, och de vita pjäserna är elfenben och de svarta, ja, är de i ebenholts tro eller vad kan det vara?
Det kan kanske vara ebenholts, men det finns ju även andra träslag som kan vara svarta, päron och så vidare. Så jag vet faktiskt inte, men det är möjligt.
Och de var förvarade dessutom. Vi har plockat upp dem ur det här märkliga fodralet, och som är svarvat, och svarvning var ju populärt på 1700-talet också. Och vad är det gjort i för material?
Det är maserbjörk.
Ja, vi kan se också att det är kompletterat med en uppsättning spelbrickor för damspel också som ligger här.
Ja.
Brädet är väldigt utsirat, men det ser inte vidare svenskt ut i alla fall.
Nej, det är ju kinesiskt motiv, och Kina var ju väldigt populärt på 1700-talet, så att det finns ju mycket inspiration från de asiatiska formerna.
Och kan ju möjligtvis vara ett beställningsarbete tillverkat där också då. Dekorationerna på alla de vita rutorna som väl är gjorda i pärlemor Enligt anteckningarna så är en del av lackeringen i guld också. Motiven på de vita rutorna är ju kinesiska, så att vi kanske kan få lite inzoomningar på det också.
Och de är alla olika också, så att det är väldigt intressant att titta på.
Mm. Och pjäserna är ju extremt detaljerat utförda och fina arbeten. Men någon närmare historia för det här spelet eller någon proveniens, det har vi väl inte.
Nej, utan det är just att det kom in vid den här basaren 1879 till museet.
Så med de här fantastiskt fina pjäserna så får vi väl lämna just det här temat och tacka dig så hemskt mycket, Karin, för att du har visat oss alla de här pjäserna och uppsättningarna. Så att vi får rikta ett stort tack till dig och till Nordiska museet för att gett Mitt i Schacks tittare en chans.
Ja, det är roligt för oss också att få chans att titta på spelen och plocka upp dem, eftersom de vanligen ligger nedpackade.
Mm.
Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode and that you'll be back next week for a new one. Have a great week until then. Bye!